Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am your host, Jay Leeming. Today we are exploring the next part of the Iliad, part 11, the Shield of Achilles. So we will do that in just a sec, but I wanted to mention there is on my website an archive of all of these recordings I've made for the podcast. I mention that because we're up to over like 160 episodes or something crazy like that. So it can be hard to navigate through everything just from a lot of the platforms out there. But on my website, I've tried to arrange them by topic. Epics are in one box and fairy tales in another. Stories which discuss a change in consciousness are in one list, and stories about the beginning or end of the world in another. So if you're seeking specific stories, that's a great place to go. And my website, once again, is jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. All of these podcasts are available free, thanks to folks who have supported this podcast. If you are able to join them, please do. You can do that through patreon.com/storyjl. Patreon.com/storyjl. So the Iliad, where are we at? Well, the Greeks and the Trojans have been fighting for a long time, many years. And the Greeks have been losing in a spectacular way, primarily because Achilles, their greatest warrior, has been staying out of the fight. But now Patroclus, the lover of Achilles, has been killed. And so this has made Achilles change completely, and now he is determined to destroy the Trojans and especially to kill Hector, the son of Priam and the Trojan warrior who killed Patroclus. We begin our story with the body of Patroclus being brought back from the battlefield to the Greek camp. Let us begin. So Menelaus and Ajax drove a chariot back to the Greek camp, and in the back of that chariot was the body of Patroclus. And they all gathered around that chariot and looked, and they saw his body, bloody, mangled by Hector's spear. And Achilles stepped through them all and knelt down beside Patroclus's body, and he wept for a long time. And then he left them all and walked to the sea. And as the sun went down, he wept beside that sea, where the curling and churning waves held his cries. And after some time, he felt gentle fingers in his golden hair, and he turned, and there was his mother, Thetis, the goddess of the deep waters. "Oh, my son," she said, "oh, my son, I hear your grief, I hear your sorrow. But be comforted by this. Though Patroclus has gone to the realm of death, still his name shall live on, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, in songs sung by bards in lands far from our own. So, though death has taken him, though he is but a shadow now, still his name will shine out, because of all that you will do here in this land of Troy." "Mother," said Achilles, "I know nothing of these songs you speak of. What you say may be true, but I will never hear these songs. All I know now is action. And so I say, tomorrow, with these hands, I will kill Hector and send him down to the underworld. But how am I to do this when I have no armor and no helmet and no shield? For Hector has taken the shining armor which was mine, given to me by my father, and which I in turn gave to Patroclus. And no doubt even now Hector struts through Troy wearing that armor, shining like a god. "My son," said Thetis, "you must simply go to the tent of Agamemnon and speak your heart and declare your intention before all of the warriors and all of the Greek kings. And then tomorrow, at dawn, return to this shore. I will meet you here, and I will have armor for you, and a helmet, and a shield." So saying, she stepped up into the sky, into the space between the wind and the air, and a moment later she was gone. And as darkness covered the world, Achilles walked from the sea shore through the Greek camp, and the Myrmidons joined him in their blue and golden armor, and they all went to the tent of Agamemnon, and they went inside, and the Myrmidons sat down on the benches, so that the entire tent was packed. In fact, many had come, not simply all the kings of Greece, but cooks had come, and carpenters, everyone longing to hear what Achilles would say. And Achilles strode to the center of the room, and a hush fell over them all, and he said, "Patroclus is dead, killed by cruel Hector. And so I say, I will kill Hector tomorrow. With these hands I will send him down to the realm of death. I have sworn this, and so it shall come to pass." And Agamemnon, sitting in his chair, said, "Achilles, we are glad that you have come. We are filled with courage now that you have joined us. And I say to you that I will be true to my word. I will return to you the lady Briseis, and I will give you 7 bronze tripods untouched by the fire, and 20 shining cauldrons, and 20 of my fastest horses. And if we are fated to take the shining city of Troy, then I will give you—" "Agamemnon," said Achilles, "give your gifts or keep them. I do not care. I think only now of the death of Hector. Put walls between us, mountains. Put the entire Trojan army between Hector and myself, and I will kill them all. I will send them all to the realm of death. For I think only of Hector, and live only for his death." And then Odysseus, limping, strode to the center of the room and said, "Achilles, now that you have joined us, we may yet have a chance of taking the glorious city of Troy. But for now, let us eat and drink, for we are tired, and there is courage and strength in these things." "Eat and drink," said Achilles. "You will eat and drink, you will carouse, drinking the honey-hearted wine which brings summer to the blood, while Patroclus lies dead, cold outside this tent, while my love lies there, turned into a bloody corpse by cruel Hector. No, this is not the time for eating and drinking, for laughter and for song. We must sleep and think only of battle and of victory." And Odysseus said, "Achilles, it's true. The belly is a shameless dog who does not respect the rituals of life and death, but simply eats and must then eat again. Still, this is one of the glories of life, to share in the good gifts of this earth. And what's more, tomorrow will be difficult, the battle hard. Some of us may not survive. So I say, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow the gods will deal out death and glory as they see fit." And Achilles said, "Odysseus, you sing, but this is not the time for singing. You speak bright words, but this is not the time for speaking. Eat if you must, but I shall not eat so long as Hector walks this earth. Anger is my nourishment now, burning, ceaseless anger. I live in the flame, and shall know no rest until Hector lies dead." So he spoke, and walked out of the tent into the dark. And later, as Agamemnon and Odysseus, and all the kings of Greece, and all the soldiers and the carpenters and even the cooks, as they all ate and drank in their tents and around their fires. Later, as Achilles wept beside the sea, above them in the dark, Thetis rose higher and higher. She climbed, drifting up, away from the mountains of earth, up closer to the stars, and at last she came to the heights of Mount Olympus itself. And in the moonlight she came to a certain peak of that mountain, a place around the back, away from all the palaces of the other gods. And this mountain peak had a great doorway in its side, a dark doorway rung round with images of stars and of moons. And Thetis entered this doorway, and walked down a long hallway towards the thunderous sound of a hammer beating metal out on an anvil, towards the glowing light of a great enormous fire. And so she stepped out into the marvelous workshop of Hephaestus, the blacksmith god. And in the center of this cavernous room there was an immense forge blazing with light. And beside it there was a great heap of rock and stone, and there were golden men and golden women carrying these stones here and there in the workshop. And ranged round all the walls there were miraculous things. Thetis saw golden wheels, and a silver boat, and a horse made of bronze that blinked and looked at her, smelling the salt on her skin. And there were silver wings, unfinished, laid out on a table, and spears and swords and glimmering cauldrons in every corner of that room. And there in the center, at his anvil, stood Hephaestus, the blacksmith god, short and hairy, black with smoke from the forge, his hammer in his hand, for he was busy pounding at a red bar of glowing metal, crafting it into the shape of a branch lush with leaves. But when he saw Thetis enter his workshop, Hephaestus put down his hammer, took off his gloves, and said, "Ah, look who has come to me from the depths of the ocean. Look who has come climbing through all the realms of air to visit me here in my smithy here in Mount Olympus. Thetis, it is good to see you. For well I remember the day that my mother Hera, the queen of the universe, in a rage took hold of my ankle and tossed me away from Olympus, so that I fell for 3 days through the air to land in the great sea. And you and the sea nymph Eurynome found me there, broken, drifting on the currents of the ocean. And you took me down into the depths, and there you healed me with your powers. And then you set me up in a cavern, a grotto in the depths of the sea, around which the great eternal river Oceanus pulsed and sparkled. And as that river flowed endlessly, inside that grotto I beat out the metal and crafted beautiful things for you and Eurynome and all of the nymphs of the sea. But perhaps you loved the things I made, the sparkling bracelets and rings and necklaces, a little too much. For one day I made you a necklace made of green fish, fish sparkling as though they were alive. And you wore this openly, so that Hera saw it and asked you where you had found this necklace. And you struggled to keep your secrets, but Hera, the queen of heaven, compelled you to confess everything that you knew. And so Hera learned that I had not been destroyed, and she compelled me to return to Olympus and set me up here in this smithy in the heart of the mountain, where now I beat the metal out and craft beautiful things for all of the gods. But tell me, Thetis, why have you come to my workshop today?" And Thetis said, "I am here, Hephaestus, because of the sorrow of my son Achilles. For the dear love of his heart, Patroclus, has been slain by man-killing Hector before the gates of Troy, so that now my son rages and weeps and tears his hair and walks shouting along the shore of the sea. And he is determined to face Hector, to kill him, sending his soul down to the realm of Hades. But my son has no armor, for he loaned his armor to Patroclus, and Hector has stripped that armor from his cold and bloody corpse. So I come to you, Hephaestus, hoping that you can make armor for my son, and a helmet and a shield, so that he may face Hector on the battlefield, and the victor may be decided by the gods." And Hephaestus said, "Have no fear, Thetis. I shall make for your son Achilles armor, a helmet, and a great shield, such as this world has never seen before." And so, heartened by these words, Thetis turned, leaving Hephaestus to his work, and walked down the long hallway out of the mountain. And when she came to that doorway decorated with stars and moons, she sat down in the moonlight and looked up at the stars. And behind her, inside the mountain, in his workshop, Hephaestus put his gloves on and began to work. And first he made a shining helmet for Achilles, decorating it with a horsehair plume. And then he made a great breastplate out of gold and silver. And then he made greaves to protect his legs, shining bright like the stars. And then he began to make a shield. And in the center of this shield, he placed the sun and the moon and all the stars of the night sky, Orion and the Great Bear and Ariadne's crown. And around these stars he placed all the seasons of the year. He crafted a field in spring, when the bees buzz amid the flowers. And in this field men were driving oxen through the generous earth, digging furrows in that earth. And at the edge of the field there were young women dressed in white, holding goblets of wine, so that the men might drink and be inspired to turn those oxen around and plow another furrow. And beside this, Hephaestus placed that same field in summer, the sun shining down, the grapes ripening on the branches. And through that vineyard, a man and a woman came walking, two lovers. And as they walked, clouds gathered above their heads and filled with rain. And then there was a great clap of thunder, and laughing, the two of them ran to take cover beneath the trees as the first drops of rain came pattering down. And beside this, Hephaestus portrayed that same field in autumn, men and women plucking the grapes from the branches. And then in a house they gathered all the grapes together, and they danced, crushing those grapes beneath their feet as they sang an old, sad song. And outside a cold wind began to blow. And then he portrayed that same field in winter, when it was filled only with stubble, and a few crows walked there amid the cold furrows. And there amid the trees, under beds of leaves, a bear and a rabbit slept soundly, dreaming of the past and the future, as the first few flakes of snow came tumbling out of the clouds. And beyond this, Hephaestus crafted two cities. In one city, a man and a woman were standing in a garden, holding hands, looking into each other's eyes. And as they spoke the words, binding their lives together, everyone gave a great shout of joy. And then there was a great feast and a celebration, and everyone danced as a bard sang a song, his voice rising up into the sky. But in the other city, there was nothing but trouble. For in the early morning, a great army had gathered outside the city walls, their spears and their swords shining in the sun, besieging that city. But inside, the people had not given up. Smoke was rising from an altar, where they had burned an offering to Athena. And even as that smoke rose into the sky, a troop of soldiers crept out a secret entrance and went creeping along a riverbed, holding their spears and their swords close, preparing to ambush that approaching army. And beyond these two cities, Hephaestus placed mountains and forests, valleys and rivers, two men fighting in the street of a town, their fists pummeling each other. And far away, a woman being laid in the ground. She had died in childbirth, and her newborn baby was even now being suckled by her sister as the tears went streaming down her face. And far away, a man was making a shield in a blacksmith's shop, and women were weaving in a house, telling stories as their fingers flashed amid the threads. And in the ocean there was a boat, and sailors paddling that boat, singing as they worked. And far away a house on fire, and deer in the forest, and horses galloping wild and free through a field. And beyond all of these things, Hephaestus placed the great river Oceanus, the river which flows always and forever into itself, renewing itself, flowing around the edge of that shield and the world. So all that night Hephaestus worked in his workshop, crafting armor for Achilles. And in the morning, when Helios drove his chariot of shimmering light into the sky, Thetis walked into the heart of the mountain, and there Hephaestus presented her with the armor. And she thanked him, and she strapped that great shield, and the breastplate, and the helmet, and the greaves, and all the bright things onto her back, and she stepped up into the air. And she flew around Olympus, and then down towards the bright earth below. And down on that earth, on the shore of the sea, near the Greek camp, Achilles was walking. He liked to walk there, hearing the crashing of the waves, which reminded him of his mother. And as he walked on that beach, suddenly he heard steps behind him, and he turned. And he saw his mother, all that armor on her back, shining in the sun, as if the sun god himself, Helios, agreed with that armor and blessed it with his light. And she put that armor down on the sand, and she said, Achilles, my son, here is armor for you, crafted by Hephaestus himself, the blacksmith of the gods. And Achilles thanked her, and put the armor on, strapping the greaves onto his legs, strapping the golden breastplate over his chest, taking up the great shield, and holding in his hand the shining helmet with the horsehair plume. And he said, Mother, Patroclus, who I loved, has gone down to the house of death. Dear Patroclus is gone from this earth, and perhaps I will soon follow. But know this, on this day, I will fight the Trojans. I will kill Hector, son of Priam. And so I will take actions to be remembered for all time, so that my name may ring like a great bell, sounding out not through space alone, but through time, so that men and women thousands of years from now shall know my name and remember this day. Yes, my son, said Thetis, it is true. You shall have such a name. So take up your weapons and do what you must do. And Achilles turned from her and walked towards the Greek camp. And Thetis stood on that shore for a long time, watching him go. And as she watched him, tears fell from her eyes and trickled down her cheeks, tears that Achilles did not see. So Achilles strode through the Greek camp, dressed in the armor made for him by Hephaestus. And he shone as he walked like a god, or perhaps like a fire set loose from the sun, to go rampaging over the earth. And he walked to the center of that camp, and came to the tent of Agamemnon. And he walked inside, and there were all the Greek kings, Menelaus and Agamemnon, and Nestor, and Ajax, and Diomedes, and Odysseus, and all the rest. And the Myrmidons of Achilles were there as well, in their blue and gold armor. And Achilles said, "Friends, today I will kill Hector, the son of Priam. So let us not tarry. Let us fight today. Let us destroy the Trojan army and take the great city of Troy on this very day." And a great shout went up from all of the Greek warriors, and they went thronging out of that tent and into the light. And they took hold of their weapons, and they leapt into their chariots. And Achilles urged on his two magical horses, Xanthus and Balius, and they went galloping towards the wall the Greeks had built. And they galloped through the shattered gate of that wall, and across the Trojan plain, with all of the Greek army following. And as they raced towards the Trojans, they let out a great shout. And Achilles, he let out a great shout, filled with mingled grief and anger and rage, everything he'd felt in his heart for so long. And the gods heard this, and descended to earth to see the spectacle, gathering in the clouds, and on distant mountains, and in the places where light and shadow come together. And Zeus made thunder crack in the sky, and the noise of all of this was so great that even Hades in the underworld heard it, and stood up from his throne, looking around, fearing that perhaps the earth would crack above his head, and light would come streaming down into the world of death. And the Trojans saw the Greeks coming, and many of them made as if to run. But Hector urged them on. "Stand your ground," he said. "Stand your ground, defend our dear city." And as Achilles drew close to the Trojan army, he leapt from his chariot, and taking a spear in his hand, he hurled it, and right then and there he killed Polydorus, the spear passing through his head, so the hot shock of it filled his mouth, and Polydorus, the brother of Hector, went falling to the ground, blood streaming from his helmet, and darkness filled his eyes, and he died. And just like that, Achilles cut off the head of another Trojan warrior, the head rolling away like a ball. And he disemboweled two others and gave a great shout, and he ran after them. And the Trojans began to scatter and run. Pell-mell they ran, heading for the great river Scamander. Closer and closer they went, splashing through those waters, as the spears and the arrows of the Greeks followed them. And Achilles killed a warrior here, another begging for mercy, but Achilles cut his head from him, it rolled away. And then, out of the river, there came a man unlike all the others, a being dressed in green armor, with a face of flowing water. And as the spears whistled through the air, as the arrows flew, as though the feathers on them wished to be birds once more, this man in green armor walked steadily, not caring what came his way, straight towards Achilles. And it stopped before him, this being made of water. And a voice came out of the helmet, the flowing, watery place where a face would normally be. And the voice said, "Achilles, I am the river. You are destroying my waters, filling them with blood, obstructing my flow. Soon I will not be able to reach the sea. Achilles, you must stop the killing." And Achilles looked at this man of water, at the river, and he gave a great cry, and with the butt of his spear he pounded on the chest of this man. And the armor collapsed to the ground, and the waters flowed away. And shouting again, Achilles ran towards the river itself. And chariots and warriors dressed in armor went into that flowing water, and they ran from Achilles, but many were too slow. He took them out, slitting his sword through their sinews, taking their lives, and darkness covered them, and they went wailing down to the underworld. But as Achilles strode forward into those waters, soon he felt his feet leave the ground. The river was rushing, foaming, sparkling, stronger and stronger, and a wave hit him, and then another. and he was whipped around and turned. He hung on to his sword, he hung on to his shield, but still the waters battered him, pummeling him from all sides, and his feet left the bed of that river, and he began to be carried downstream. And another wave came, and Achilles reached out and took hold of a tree. But slowly, with a creaking noise, those waves uprooted that tree from the bank, and he went floating down that stream in the rushing waters. And as he moved down this stream, as he was carried away, Achilles called out and he said, Zeus, Father Zeus, help me, Lord of the lightning, you who marshal the thunder clouds, hear my words, help me. And Zeus, the Lord of the lightning, he heard the words of Achilles, and he came down from Olympus, and he went to Mount Ida, and he stood there at the spring that was the very source of the river Scamander, which even at that moment was rampaging across the Trojan plain, carrying Achilles away. And Zeus spoke and said, River, you must not do this. Achilles is fated to fight on this day, to rampage, to drive the Trojan army back into the city of Troy. You must relinquish your waters. You must not take part in this battle. So Zeus spoke, and his shining words were heard by the river, and reluctantly that river slackened its flow, and Achilles felt the streaming waters around him becoming less, draining away, and his feet touched the bed of the river again, and he gave a great cry, Gah! And he came running out of that river, water dripping from his golden flashing armor, like a man of fire and water, like a supernatural element of this world. He came running across the Trojan plain, and the Trojans ran from him, shouting they ran away. Still he came closer and closer. And the great gates of the city were opened, and the army went rushing between those gates and into the safety of that city. And as all the soldiers rushed past him, Hector watched them go. But he did not rush between those gates. He stood his ground. And others yelled to him, Hector, inside, Achilles is unstoppable. And on the wall above Hector stood King Priam and his wife Hecuba. And they looked down at their son. And King Priam said, Hector, my son, come home, come in through the gates. Do not stand there and face man-killing Achilles alone. But Hector said nothing, as all the soldiers of the Trojan army continued to run past him through the gates into the safety of the city. And then those great gates were closed, and Hector turned to face Achilles alone. All right, then. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for attending to this story. As always, I invite you to explore it yourself. with your own mind and heart, with your own imagination. Even now, as it's ringing, hopefully, around us, like the sound of a bell, like the echo of a bell, listen to it. Remember that story. Are there images which stick with you, which jump out at you? Hephaestus making that shield, the images on the shield. Achilles fighting the river speaking to him, Zeus speaking to that river. Hector facing Achilles alone. It's kind of a crime to stop the story right here. I'm sorry, but it was getting long, And so there's another one coming hard on the heels of this story. But a pause is not a bad thing. Your reactions, as I keep saying, are as important and valuable as my own, and will be a more certain way into this story than anything I could say. But nevertheless, I'm here with this microphone. I guess I'll just say a few thoughts. That shield, great. Wow. It's fascinating how this shield contains all of life. That seems to be the goal of Hephaestus, and perhaps of the goal of the bard singing, telling this story. This was an oral story, remember. It was first spoken for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and then written down later. It was a spoken journey through this story. I can imagine the bard, he or she, telling this part of the story, and maybe getting a little carried away with the shield. That's one way to put it. Maybe that's a silly way to put it. Maybe it's exactly what he or she wanted. But it's remarkable. Most of the shields carried by warriors in this story are designed to scare your opponent, to frighten them. You've got shields with snakes on them and lions, or the head of a gorgon or a Medusa. So you look at that shield and you're like, whoa, stay back. Ugh, that freaks me out. But this is something different. Something different. It is all of life. The stars, the moon, the sun. The 4 seasons of the year. We begin with celestial things and then move to the earth. The seasons are how the celestial objects, the sun, of course, most importantly, interacts with the earth. We get all 4 seasons. We get a cycle. It is circular, the shield. It's circular, the stories on top of the shield, on the shield, are circular. We have the men plowing the field, the women offering them wine at the edges of the field to inspire them to keep going and to plow another furrow. The wine, of course, will be the end product of all of this. So with that wine, you are inspired to dig and work in the fields and make wine again. So it's a circular pattern, as of course the seasons are as well. And we get 2 cities, one of peace, one of war, one of love and one of hate, you could say, one of anger and one of love. They are both given equal place. 50% of the city space on this shield is for the happy city, 50% for the one in trouble. And we have this wedding, a beautiful wedding, feasting, dancing, and we have trouble and fighting and combat. The implication being that these things, to love something, to be angry, to hate something, those emotions are as natural and as intrinsic to the cycles of life as are winter and summer, spring and fall. And it is a city besieged by an army, of course, just as Troy is being besieged. And beyond that, we have men fighting in a street. We've got, animals of all kinds. I have, this is my version of this story. This is my version of this shield. So I've thrown in some things, the house on fire, things like that, which are not mentioned in the Homeric version of this story. But if you're keeping score, you should know, pretty much everything, all the big things are the same. The moon, the stars, the seasons, those fields with people working, and the city of happiness and the city of trouble and fear and anger. That's all in the original. And of course, the great stream of Oceanus surrounding that shield and surrounding the world. That was their vision, this river which pours into itself and is never spent. It is circular, and it is, of course, a god. That river Oceanus is the father of, I think, 1,000 different river spirits, rivers in this world. So it's a miraculous vision. And what inspires me about it is the way in which Achilles is protected by the daily round. He's protected by this shield, of course, by this shield which exemplifies, which describes all of life. Life is what protects him, and those circular repeating patterns. We strive to be rid of death, to have this huge victory, this leap beyond, and to suddenly live without pain or sorrow. But those images on that shield say that pain and sorrow are a part of this life, and it is just a natural thing. And when I think about these things in my own life, as they've been expressed in my own life, I think of my father dying of emphysema and of the tremendous medical interventions we seek, gigantic leaps, a pill to cure cancer, or to do this, or some new machine or technology which will save us from death. But I remember my father having more and more trouble getting through the day, and I remember those daily rituals. Orange juice in the morning with toast, with melted butter on it. I remember being in that house with him, with the oxygen machine humming and droning through every board in that house, so it seemed. And I remember going to the grocery store alone, and how I was greeted with fruits and vegetables, lemons, oranges, bananas. This was winter, but they were all there. It was miraculous. And to see the daily round, to see people buying bread and milk, mothers, fathers, kids, children tugging on their mother's hands to get to the ice cream cooler. Life went on inside the house where my mother and father lived, where my father was slowly dying. There was a sense of death and doom and of endings. But to go to that grocery store was to be reminded that things happen in patterns. Life happens in a rhythm, and it goes on. And it's a victory to buy bread at the store, a victory over death, as great as any sort of huge medical victory. And so I see that in this shield. That protected me at that time. It encouraged me and reassured me. Your father's dying, but people still go to the store, and people still eat pizza, and kids are still tugging at their parents' hands. And then a bit later, we get Achilles fighting the river. He's on a rampage. He's killing everything in sight. And he meets the river. And this is the only force in this story that Achilles cannot beat. He does not win against the river. The river withdraws from the combat, as it were. He is more than a match for every human opponent he meets on the battlefield. But the river beats Achilles and uproots him from the ground, sends him crashing downstream, a victim to the rampaging waters of that river. And Zeus comes and says, hey, river, knock it off. This guy's fated to do a certain thing, and you're getting in the way. I've simplified this slightly. In the Homeric version, Hephaestus gets involved as well, and there's a fire which attempts to dry out the river to stop it. And then Zeus kind of calls a halt to that as well, to all of this. Also, I have personified the river in a physical way as a man made of water walking through the battlefield, because I thought it was cool. And in the Homeric version, the river just speaks as itself. And I wanted to give the river a body. So I made that up, but there's certainly precedent for it in Greek myth. I mean, all the time, rivers and forces of nature are given human form so that we might relate to them. So Anyway, no apologies for that at all, but I'm just letting you know what you're listening to here. And honestly, I don't have much more to say. There's a lot of amazing stuff coming up. So let's not dilly-dally. I'm going to stop here. But I hope this story lives in you in a beautiful way. And that's what we want. That's the goal. That's how the gifts of stories such as these are given to us, when we can see ourselves in Achilles, in his mother Thetis, who knows he is going to die young but seeks to protect him all the same, and wishes in some way to have him have glory, perhaps. But Achilles is really the one really doing that. Like, I want a name which lives forever, mother, father. And so perhaps we can find that in ourselves. If you can, that will help open this story for you to all of the characters and all of the situations. All right, then. Thank you for listening. Patreon.com/StoryJL is the way to support this podcast. You can find more episodes in various nooks and corners of the internet, also at my website, which is jayleeming.com, JayLeeming.com. Thank you to everyone who has been able to support this podcast in the past. It keeps it going. It keeps me going. Thank you. And take care.